At work, everything felt routine. I'd been with the company for a few years, falling into the steady rhythm of daily tasks. My desk, nestled in a quiet corner, felt like a second home. Family photos and a few potted plants giving it a cozy, personal touch. It was a space of comfort and predictability until the notes started appearing. The first one showed up on a Monday morning. I just set my coffee down and opened my drawer to grab a pen, but instead, I found a small folded paper. My name was written on the front in sharp, precise handwriting. I figured it was a joke, maybe a leftover from some team-building game I'd missed. But as I unfolded it, a chill prickled up my spine. The message was short, direct, and far from funny. "I know what you did last summer." I froze. What was this supposed to mean? Last summer had been uneventful, just a regular vacation with friends. No secrets, no scandals, nothing that would warrant this. I shook it off, laughing nervously. "Someone's got too much time on their hands," I muttered, crumpling the note and tossing it in the trash. But it didn't stop. Every few days, another note appeared. Sometimes it was inside my desk drawer. Other times it was slipped between files or hidden under my keyboard. Each one felt more invasive than the last. They mentioned my childhood fears, my insecurities, even thoughts I'd never shared with anyone. Every message ended with a haunting line. "I'm closer than you think," or "You can't hide from me." This is where real-life lessons come into play. If you've ever experienced something similar, whether it's anonymous messages, unexplained signs, or sudden anxiety at work, you're not alone. Workplace paranoia is a real psychological response to feeling out of control in a familiar environment. Experts suggest that if you're facing something like this, take practical steps to regain control of your space. For example, you could document each incident, noting dates, times, and details of the messages. This not only helps you keep track, but also provides evidence if you decide to escalate the issue to HR or management. Paranoia settled in like a fog. I'd glance around the office, eyes darting from coworker to coworker, looking for signs. A side glance, a smirk, anything suspicious. But everything seemed normal. My colleagues were wrapped up in their own worlds, oblivious to my quiet panic. I confided in Sarah, a friend at work, hoping she'd have some insight. "Are you sure it's not just a prank?" she asked, concern in her eyes. "Maybe you should talk to HR." Her suggestion made sense, so I did. Mrs. Dempsey, the HR manager, listened with her usual stone-faced seriousness. I felt ridiculous explaining it, like I was being paranoid. She assured me they'd investigate. "Do you have any idea who might be doing this?" she asked, but I had no answer. No enemies, no grudges, just this growing sense of unease. If you're ever in this situation, involving HR is a smart move, but it's not always an instant solution. HR departments have protocols to follow, and unless there's a clear threat or visible evidence, their actions might be limited. This is why documenting everything is essential. Keep every note, take photos, and track every interaction you have with HR. The more concrete your case, the more seriously they'll take it. Days passed with no news from HR. The notes stopped for a while, and I almost believed it was over. But just as I'd begun to relax, they came back. Darker this time. The messages shifted from cryptic to chilling. "I know you're scared," one read. Another said, "You're not safe here." Then came Friday. I'd had a long, exhausting week and was just trying to finish a report. I reached for a file from my drawer, and there it was. Another note. My heart pounded as I read it. "I'm watching you right now." If you've ever felt watched, truly watched, you know how unsettling it is. Your senses become hyper-aware. Every movement in your peripheral vision seems sharper. Every sound, a chair creaking, a footstep, becomes a possible threat. This reaction is deeply rooted in human survival instincts. Experts say that if you're ever in this position, it's critical to ground yourself. Take deep breaths, focus on facts, and avoid letting your mind spiral into what-ifs. Panic hit me like a punch to the chest. My hands shook as I gripped the note, eyes darting around the room. I felt it, the weight of someone's gaze, heavy and unrelenting. Slowly, I turned, expecting to see someone, anyone, behind me. But the office was empty. Most of my coworkers had left for the weekend. The hum of voices, the ringing of phones, all of it had faded to silence. Overhead, the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, flickering in sync with my heartbeat. I stood, legs weak, and started searching. I checked behind partitions, peeked into conference rooms, even looked out the window. Nothing. No one. But I still felt it, that invisible stare boring into me. My logical mind told me it was paranoia. The rest of me knew better. Unable to bear it, I grabbed my things and left. I didn't look back, too afraid of what I'd see, or worse, what I wouldn't. That weekend, I barely slept. Every creak in my apartment sounded like footsteps. Every shadow in the corner of my eye seemed to shift, moving just out of sight. When Monday arrived, I dragged myself back to the office. My desk looked the same, untouched. I hesitated before opening the drawer, my heart in my throat. No note. Relief hit me like a wave, brief but welcome. Then I noticed something. The note from Friday was gone. I'd left it in the drawer. I'd been sure of it. But now it was missing. My chest tightened with dread. Someone had been at my desk. Someone had taken it. The realization hit like ice water down my back. Whoever was doing this wasn't just close, they were here. I went straight to HR, my heart pounding with frustration and fear. "Check the cameras again," I demanded. Mrs. Dempsey's eyes narrowed. "We've already checked the footage," she said curtly. "No one's been near your desk." Her tone shifted. "Are you sure you're not misplacing them yourself?" she asked, her gaze sharp. Her words stung. I left the office feeling more isolated than ever. If you've ever felt this kind of isolation, you'll know it's one of the hardest parts of dealing with an unknown threat. It's easy to question yourself, to wonder if you're imagining things. But trust your instincts. You're not alone. People have been through it, and there are steps you can take to reclaim your peace of mind. Story 2. The first time the house alarm blared in the dead of night, I shrugged it off as a glitch. I'd only been living there for a couple of weeks, and though the previous owner promised everything was in working order, I figured the alarm system was just old. Half asleep, I stumbled downstairs, heart pounding like a drum. I checked every door and window, making sure they were all locked. Everything looked fine. Just a technical hiccup, I told myself, and went back to bed. But it didn't stop. Night after night, always at 3 a.m., the alarm would explode into the silence. Every time, I'd get up, walk the house, and find nothing out of place. Frustrated, I called the alarm company. They sent a technician who did a full inspection. No issues, no malfunctions, no signs of tampering. Yet, night after night, the alarm went off like it had its own agenda. Let's pause here for a moment. If you've ever dealt with a home alarm system, you know how unnerving false alarms can be, especially in the middle of the night. Alarms are meant to give you peace of mind, but when they're unpredictable, they do the opposite. If you've experienced this, you might be wondering, what's the best way to handle it? Well, here's some practical advice. Check for wiring issues. Old or faulty wiring can cause sensors to misfire. Inspect sensor alignment. Sometimes, a door or window sensor that's slightly off can trigger the alarm. Look for environmental triggers. Pets, strong drafts, or even insects can trip motion sensors. Call your alarm company. It's worth having a technician inspect the system. Sometimes, A reset or firmware update can resolve it. Now back to the story. About a week after it all started, I was in the basement, sorting through old boxes left behind by the previous owner. I'd lost track of time, caught up in the dusty knickknacks and forgotten memorabilia. That's when I heard it. A sound from above. The soft creak of floorboards. The shuffle of footsteps. My breath caught in my chest. These weren't random creaks from an old house settling. These were footsteps. Deliberate. Slow. Moving from room to room. My heart pounded as I fumbled for my phone. Whispering, I told the 911 operator that someone was in my house. She stayed on the line, telling me to stay quiet and hidden until the police arrived. I could hear the footsteps move from the kitchen to the living room to the base of the staircase. Each step was slow and deliberate. I crouched behind a stack of boxes, trying to steady my breathing, praying whoever was up there wouldn't come down. The minutes felt like hours, every creak of the floorboards sending a fresh wave of fear through me. Then, finally, I heard the crunch of tires on the driveway, the slam of car doors. The police had arrived. Relief hit me like a tidal wave. But the footsteps upstairs didn't stop. They just kept walking. Not hurried, not panicked. Just steady, like whoever was up there had no reason to rush. If you've ever experienced an intruder scare, you know how paralyzing it can be. Here's a quick reality check. Don't assume it's nothing. Trust your instincts. If you're ever in a situation like this, follow these steps. Call 911 immediately. Don't wait to investigate on your own. Stay quiet and hidden. Make yourself hard to find. Basements, closets, or rooms with a lock are your best options. Arm yourself if possible. If you're trained and have access to something for self-defense, have it ready. Don't confront the intruder, wait for the police. Your safety comes first. Back to the story. I stayed hidden until I heard the officers' voices calling out. Only then did I climb the basement stairs, legs like jelly. I met them in the entryway, still shaking. The officers searched every inch of the house. No broken windows. No unlocked doors. Nothing had been touched. They reviewed footage from the security cameras I'd installed just days earlier. No one was seen entering or leaving. Not a single person on camera. Could have been the house settling, one officer said. Or an animal outside, another suggested. But I saw the look in their eyes. They didn't believe it either. They were just trying to reassure me. After they left, I tried to convince myself it was all in my head. Maybe I'd misheard. Maybe I was paranoid, living alone in a new house. But I knew better. I'd heard it. I felt it. The alarm continued to go off at 3 a.m., like clockwork. And every time it did, I felt that same cold chill crawl up my spine. A few nights later, I'd had enough. I decided to stay up and watch the security footage in real time, determined to catch whatever was causing it. I sat in front of the monitor, the house completely dark except for the glow of the screen. Time crawled by. 2:58. 2:59. 3 o'clock, nothing. Then, at 3:01, the alarm went off. My heart jumped into my throat. I rewound the footage, eyes darting across the screen, scanning for anything, any sign of movement. If you're thinking about setting up your own security system, here's some advice. Don't rely on one line of defense. Use motion-activated lights. They're cheap, effective, and often scare off potential intruders. Install cameras in key locations. Entry points like front doors, back doors, and basements are essential. Set up mobile alerts. Stay in the loop, even when you're away from home. Back to the story. Nothing. No shadow. No figure. No animal. But I heard it. On the footage. The faint, steady thud of footsteps. Soft but clear. They moved through the house, slow and deliberate. I played it back again over and over. The sound was there every time. But when I showed it to someone else, they heard nothing. Just silence. It was as if the sound was only meant for me. The final night I spent there, I'd convinced myself to try one more time. I face it. I'd stay up all night if I had to. I sat in front of the monitor again, eyes heavy but determined. 2:59. 3 o'clock. Silence. 3:01. The alarm erupted like a bomb. I jumped, heart racing. I rewound the footage, barely breathing, eyes locked on the screen. And that's when I saw it. Not a figure, not a shadow, but the sound was there. Footsteps, louder than ever, like they were right beside me. And then something else. A whisper, not faint this time, not distant, right in my ear. It wasn't a phrase, not a full sentence. It was one word. Run.